Hey guys, thanks for joining us. We're out here for our annual HST Team Week Instructor Development. We were just about to zero our rifles and we thought we'd take you along on that journey. Now I know the title of the video might be a little controversial, but there's a reason for that. Because probably for the last 10, 12 years of collecting data on zero, we see about 95% of people come out that say they're zeroed and they're not necessarily zeroed. They'll choose a zero range, 25, 50, 100, and they'll shoot and then call themselves zeroed. What we want to do today is take you on the whole journey. We want to talk about all the processes that are necessary to achieve the goal.
They often choose that zero just based on some theoretical ballistics table or data table that they find online or in some book somewhere. Today, we're going to let the rifle tell us a story. We're going to let the rifle do what it does because the bullet never lies.
And that's why I think those processes are so important. So hopefully you can hang in there with us as we all individually describe our processes of how we make sure that our guns are set up so when a worst case scenario happens, we don't have to sit there and go, oh my God, I don't know where my round's gonna go. Okay, so hopefully you guys get something out of this video. Ready to go?
Ready?
All right.
All right, guys, let's head to the 50. All right, guys, line's hot. Clear the load and make ready. All right, first step in this process is ensuring that I create a stable platform for the gun. We do that by making sure we have a rock solid, stable, prone position. I start this process by burning a hole into my target with my eyes. I'm not going to take my eyes off of that target. Then I essentially move into this squatting position as I've trapped the gun, and as I lay my hands on the ground, I'm simply going to kick my feet out. This ensures that my natural point of aim, my body alignment, stays in line with my target. Now, as I sink in behind the gun, I'm feeling for my shoulders being straight across my hips, a straight line across my hips, a straight line through my knees and even my feet. And I want those lines to be as perpendicular to the axis of the bore as possible. I'm stacking my body behind the gun. That is going to maximize the stability for the gun. Once I feel that straight line, then I'm going to start the process of digging my mag in to further maximize the stability for the gun.
Now that I've got my magazine dug in, and when I say dug in, I mean dug in, like not just sitting on the ground, like build that first point of contact because it's extremely important. Now, there might be some controversy to this still a little bit out there where people think that it's going to cause a malfunction to your gun if you're putting your magazine on the deck. That's not true, unless your gun is not to spec. These guns in today's world, with the military specifications and how they're built with the metallurgies and mag design, should not be a problem. If you have that problem, then your weapon is not in spec, okay? But this is a very valuable point of contact. Once I've got that down, I've not put my hand on the gun yet, I'm establishing that it's solid, and then I can start to work into the next point of contact, which is going to be my elbows. Once my elbows feel really good, which that's a natural point of aim for me, I'm going to go ahead and start marking my elbows. This is where I take my positions to a little bit further. So I'll start to dig in my elbow here by keeping the gun in place and not moving the rest of my body. I'll even take and dig in a little hole over here in the grass since I can, and I'll cheat because it's my zero, it's nobody else's. I want the most perfect data that I can get downrange. I'll recheck that. That feels pretty good. And then I might slide into this one a little bit and maybe push this grass out of the way so there's a rigid abutment for my elbow to go against. I come back into the optic, I check it. Mag feels good, elbows feel good, and now the third point of contact is my feet. I'm going to be digging in back here into my toes, and when my toes are pushing forward with my body into the back of the gun. This is the key point versus people being loose on the stock back here. This is what my feet are helping with, driving my shoulder into the gun.
So now that we have a good connection to the rifle with our body, we're going to work on our cheek weld. And I'm going to start with my chin off of the buffer tube. And I'm going to start at the 12 o'clock position and slowly lower my cheek down onto the buffer tube to the 6 o'clock position where my reticle is centered inside my optic lens. I want to be careful here not to cant my neck too much because that can cause a parallax issue. Now, inside of 50 meters, these optics have a pretty minimal parallax, but there is parallax at distance, and that can cause quite a bit of issues.
I have a really good cheek weld here, and the next thing I'm going to do is start to work on my brightness adjustments. I don't want the black dot to overpower my optic, and just the same, I don't want my optic to overpower the black dot. So I'm going to take just 2 clicks down here, take a look at that, maybe go 1 more back up, and that looks really good. I have a really good contrast between optic reticle and my target, and the next thing I'm going to focus on is breathing.
So when it comes to breathing during this process, we have a couple of options, and they are defined for different situations. So we have the respiratory pause, which is more so like precision shooting, more marksmanship level type. You have a lot of time on your hands, that kind of environment. And then secondly, we have the half breath, which is a bit more dynamic. Both still can be achieved during the zero process, which you might see along the line today. People will choose what they want to choose to do, whatever they feel more comfortable with. I'm going to choose the respiratory pause, and what that means is I'm going to take a shot after each pause. You then have to establish your LRP, meaning your lowest relaxation point, because if that's off, if that LRP is inconsistent, well, then your group's going to be consistent too. So the more consistent and the more precise you can be every single shot with that LRP, then your group will tell you, and your group will be a lot more accurate shots. So now that I've chosen my breathing technique, which is respiratory pause, I'm just going to talk through it real quick as I'm going through it. So I breathe in, reticle comes down, I find my LRP, I release, and I would take the shot. I'm breathing in to reach that LRP because it's already established now. I release, and I take that shot. One more time. Release, and this is where I take my 3rd shot. You guys get the point. So at this point now I'm going to move on to my mental visual representation of me zeroing this gun without shooting the rifle yet.
We're going to visualize our process just like a professional athlete or a power lifter. Just like they step to the bar, place their hands and their feet the same place every time, to make sure that it's a repeatable process. I'm going to do the same thing. As I look through the optic and start my breathing process, when I get to my respiratory pause, I'm going to gently just touch the face of the trigger. At this time, I'll probably even click the safety off, because on the 5th rep of me doing this without shooting the weapon, I will break the shot. So as I breathe through 4 times, and the optic is moving, I'm gently touching the face of the trigger. And I'm looking at where my optic is landing on the target and making it repeatable. Before I break that 5th shot, however, we need to talk about trigger manipulation.
All right, when we think about trigger control, there's 3 things we want to think about. There's placement of our trigger finger on the actual trigger, there's hinge points, and there's actually pressing the trigger. When we think about placement, we want to use the pad of our finger right behind the fingernail and have that centered on the trigger. Think of a claymore mine, and your fingernail is a claymore mine with the front towards the enemy. That'll help you remember the placement on the trigger. When you think about the hinge points, there are 3 hinge points in your index finger, and our body naturally wants to use all 3 and curl that trigger, and we would like it to go straight to the rear. In order to do that, we're going to use 1 hinge point and isolate. Think of an inchworm, and actually just use that center hinge point instead of all 3, so it isolates and goes straight to the rear. It doesn't introduce any lateral forces in the gun. And lastly, there's actually pressing the trigger itself. So I've already done several mental visualizations on this, so I'm actually going to go ahead and fire, releasing the safety. As soon as I get to my LRP, or lowest relaxed point, I'm actually going to fire my round. So sweeping the safety off. Inhale, reset.
All right, if you guys are finished with that, go ahead and stand up. Let's head down range and let's mark these targets.
I just finished my 5-round string. As I walk up to the targets, I'm going to take and make a prediction based on how I felt, how the rounds broke. Number 2, didn't feel like it was dead center and returned back to my center point on the black dot, but let's see what we got. Just as I thought, I had that second shot actually break outside the aiming dot I had here. Also just evaluating my group, not super excited about the actual shot placement of all the rounds together. It's a little bit looser than I like. So before I want to make an adjustment, I'm going to reshoot this and tighten that up. All right, now if you look at Dale's target, he's got a nice tight group here. You can see all 5 rounds are nice and tight, so when he makes an adjustment, it's going to be real specific, and he's going to have a good 0. Make sure on your targets you have some type of measurement. This is 1-inch grids. This is important because when you go to make your adjustment, it needs to be an accurate adjustment. So you need to know what your adjustments are on your EOTech or your aim point or whatever optic that you're using. For the EOTech, it's got a 100 yard. Use a 1/2-inch click. So it's a 1/2-inch adjustment at 100 yards. So we were at 50, so it's going to be a 1/4-inch click or a 1/4-inch adjustment for this. So Dale has 1-inch adjustment. It's going to be 4 clicks to get that adjustment. All right, it's time to reset.
All right, guys, second 0 dot drill. Go ahead and get in the prone. It's on you.
All right guys, so today I am zeroing this LPVO, which I haven't done on this particular rifle in probably 6 months. In fact, the last time I think we did it, we were in Colorado. Now we're here in Florida at sea level. So what I thought was zeroed is actually not. I also experimented a little bit with my breath. I did a breath hold, whereas the majority of these guys on the zero process are doing LRP. I did a breath hold and I tried to see how many shots I could comfortably get off during that hold. So I got about 10 rounds off. I also had this LPVO on full magnification. Now, if you're running a magnified optic, you need to reference the manufacturer's suggestions for distance that you need to zero it at and even magnification power. So be sure you actually read the manual and reference that. That full magnification allowed me to actually call some of my data. So that's why I've got a couple of these labeled. Now with the LPVO at a 50-yard zero, I actually need to be at about 1.5 inches low. So that gives me a 100-yard zero. Again, if you know your data, you can zero at any distance at any distance. So I'm simply going to make the changes right here, make the input in the optic, and then go back to 50, reshoot this, get the data.
So now that we as a team have completed our zero process and all the individual steps that are associated with that zero process, we're going to begin our story. The story is simply a ballistics chart that you print with your rifle. Our point of aim is never going to change. No matter if you're at the 50-yard line or the 500-yard line, the point of aim is always going to stay the same because we want a real look at what that bullet is doing at that specific yard line depending on our zero. So we're going to start at the 50-yard line and we're going to shoot 5 rounds. Then we're going to walk down to our target and we're going to mark each individual shot with the number 50, and that just tells us that we shot those specific rounds at the 50-yard line. Then we're going to repeat this process at the 100, 200, and 300-yard line, and we're going to mark those impacts as well with either 100, 200, or 300 to show us that those rounds were impacted at that specific distance. Once we're done shooting, we're going to all collectively walk down as a team and take the averages of those impacts based on elevation. So we should, with a 50-meter zero, see a little bit of a rise at 100, about the same elevation as a 200, and then drop out between 9 and 12 inches as a 300. The last thing that we're going to do as a team is mark the averages of those impacts. Again, averages. So if you have 3 impacts that are really close together and 2 flyers, think about how those averages are impacted by the proximity of those rounds. So we'll mark the 50, 100, 200, and 300 meter averages for elevation, and that will give us our combat effective zone, which Travis will show in a second.
Also, on your target, make sure you add your dope, okay? Because this is now dope, data on a previous engagement. So with that, we should treat these weapons just like we treat precision rifles. So make sure you guys put your barrel length, put your ammo that you're running specifically, what optic you're running, what gun, because I know we all have a lot of different guns. So make sure you put that data, because I always want to come back and reference this. Just like Jared, you had that LPVO you shot in Colorado last month, and now we're here, or 6 months ago. Well, you're going to see the differences now. So we want to review that data and this data, and then over time, we know our gun a little bit better.
All right, so after months of not doping this gun, today I'm pretty happy with what I got here. I've got my 50 is a little bit low here. I've got about a 2-inch climb to 100. My 200 pretty much stayed up. I saw these 2 shots. My 200 group stayed up here with the 100, and then here's my 300. So I've got roughly a 10.5-inch combat effective zone out to 300. So I'll take that all day long with this gun.
And these are similar results that you're going to see here. Back to another example like Jared's, except running an EOTech versus the HD Razor. 50, a little low, 100, almost 3 inches higher than the 50, because it always climbs, right? Because that shorter zero, that bullet's still climbing up from 50 to 100, starts to come back down at 200, back down pretty center. So I got 5 out of 7 rounds in the 200. And then I go back to 300 and I drop down, which is my usual effective zone for this 12-inch BCM with a Huxworks can. It's about been consistent for like the last year. And then that is my drop. So now, yes, is that a combat effective zone hitting somebody in the gut? Sure it is. But if I needed to hold over like that drill we're about to do later on our own, I would just flip it, hold it up here. Especially if I needed to make a shot where, let's say the guy's head is sticking out over a car at 300 meters, I'm gonna be hitting the car. So I do have to hold over at those distances, where out to 200, I don't need to do anything except put my dot on target and pull the trigger. So pretty consistent. You can see Liam's is the same. He's running the same gun as me, so we have very consistent stuff, but it doesn't mean it's always gonna be the same just because it's the same gun. Even the same ammo, which I think most all of us are running the same. Same with, is that Aaron? Ben's. Ben's is very consistent to mine and Jared's and Liam's. And now whose is this? We got Aaron's. Aaron's has got a 50 in the center, dead center, 100, 2 inches high, 200 drops out. Now when your 200 starts to drop out like this is another result. Where the 200 typically wants to land on top, typically, not always. What's happening is his 300, I can tell you before he even went back to 300, it's gonna be off paper. So he's right down here and here. He's just underneath the paper. So, and that's the first time you said that's happened to you with that particular gun, and you've been running that gun for as long as I've known you. All right, so now we have an anomaly. I don't trust it, right? We test it, we question it, we go back and probably do this process again. And this is why we say we're always chasing our zero. If we come down here a little bit more, consistent. Here's another one off paper, same thing. Here's another one here. I'll use Dale's as an example. So Dale, if you look at his actual group here and you see the low 50, the 100 just barely creeps above it. 200 drops out drastically, almost like a 300, and then his 300's down here. So how do we change this? What should we do, guys? Move the 50 up. Don't move your 300 or your 200 up. You put 4 clicks into that 50, all of that data will immediately shift, just like these other examples that we've shown. And then everybody else is fairly consistent, okay? And with that, the bullet is now telling us the truth, and we have data that we can record and go back and make changes. You got anything to add to that?
The best way to validate this is go do it again. It'd be great if we could do it again today, but ideally we come back tomorrow, run it again, run it a 3rd day, run it a 4th day. That takes an investment in time, but that's one of the best things we can do to validate this. Then we know more.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of zeroing every single time you go to the range is what I would suggest. Even if it's for 5 minutes just to confirm your 50 or 25 or 100 or whatever you use, if you get the opportunity to do this, frequently, I'd highly suggest doing it because you're always going to chase your zero like we keep saying. Nobody's always zeroed, especially if you're a patrol rifleman or a military guy, or you got that gun in your safe for a long time, or you're traveling the world like we do. We're going to check our zeros every single class we go to, every time we step up on the range, so we can verify that I have the ability to uphold a higher standard of care in society when I need to take a critical shot at distance, which you've seen a lot more happening in today's world. Okay, and once you start to do that data collection over and over and over, especially if you're not confident in your zero or your fundamentals, what happens over time when you build that undeniable stack of evidence or data? Your zero is exactly what the hell you say it is versus your assumption or theory of what you say it is. So hopefully, guys, that helped you out a little bit. Again, just the process is to achieve the goal of zeroing. Take it seriously, because if you don't have a good zero, like I always say, you don't have shit. Trust me, from being in combat operations and not having a zeroed rifle, it's the scariest thing you can ever imagine. So with that, make sure you maintain consistency in your zero, continue to chase it, find that data. If you guys watch this video and you see something that we might be missing, because trust me, there's a lot that we want to cover in this short amount of time, but we can't. So if you want something more specific on any of the processes that we covered out here, make sure you put the comments down below, and maybe you'll see a whole other video just on that segment in the future. Guys, thanks for joining us today here at our annual training in Florida. I'm Travis Haley and the HST team. Stay sharp, be safe, and die free.